Hello and welcome to this Tolley webinar. I'm Chris Jones, Director of Tax Markets at Tolley, and I'm joined today by Adam Craggs from RPC, who has co-written, together with his business partner Jonathan Levy, a new book, A Practical Guide to Tax Appeals, which we have published. And it's new ground for Tolley to publish a practical guide taking people through the steps in taking an appeal against an HMRC decision. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you.
Now, Adam, this guide has been written by you and your colleague Jonathan Levy to help practitioners understand the considerable changes that have taken place in the tribunal system for challenging HMRC decisions. Can you briefly talk us through what those main changes are?
I can, Chris. Prior to 2009, you had a rather convoluted tribunal system. If you were appealing a VAT matter, it went to the VAT and Duties Tribunal. If it was direct tax, such as income tax, corporation tax, you had a choice. The simple cases went to local general commissioners who were made up of local businessmen, the great and good of the community, if you like, who weren't necessarily professionally qualified, and the more complex cases tended to be heard by the special commissioners, the judges there being lawyers and accountants. In 2009 it was decided by the government that they should unify the system, which makes an awful lot of sense, and simplify it, if you like, and introduce one tribunal, the first tier tribunal, and there are various chambers. The tax chamber now hears all appeals against HMRC decisions.
Okay. So it's a new system.
Yes.
It's been with us for a few years now. It's bedding down. How would you describe the climate out there in terms of HMRC's approach to inquiries and investigations and the decisions that are being reached and resulting in appeals, and what successes are people having?
Well, I think I've certainly noticed in the last 2 or 3 years quite a shift in HMRC's approach. I think part of the reason emanates from the merger of the old Customs and Excise and the old Inland Revenue to form one unified department in 2005, and I think most practitioners would agree that that led to a change in culture, and I think HMRC certainly tend to be more proactive now than they ever were. And of course, with the credit crunch from 2007 onwards, that led to a lot of pressure on the department to increase tax shields. I think it's fair to say that they have been far more proactive and robust in their inquiries, and obviously with the litigation and settlement strategy which was introduced in 2007, they can't do package deals anymore. They can't simply split the difference, so the days of simply haggling with HMRC are long gone, and as a consequence there has been an increase in disputes which sadly have had to be determined by the first tier tribunal and the higher courts.
So it is an increasing area, and obviously HMRC are under some pressure to bring in more revenue.
Indeed.
From essentially the same tax base.
Yes, quite, and I think given hopefully that the economy is improving now, and we've seen the worst of the recession and so on, but in that climate they were under an awful lot of pressure to increase yield, and as you say, from the same number of taxpayers, etc.
Now, many moons ago I took a case to in those days, the general commissioners, and I was working for a larger firm, and even then that's quite a daunting experience. Imagine myself as a smaller practitioner where I don't have the backup of a large firm. It must be a very nerve-wracking experience, and even more so these days, because once upon a time you were taking your case to local businessmen, or in the old magistrate system.
Yes.
So it's a much more different system. Now you're up in front of professional judges, which can be a lot more daunting. What would be your top 5 tips to dispel those fear factors and encourage practitioners to take a case where they feel legitimately they have a case that needs answering?
I think they certainly shouldn't be deterred, because it is an informal system, and the tribunal staff and indeed the judges do their very best to put people at ease, whether it be professional advisors or indeed taxpayers. It's not the same as appearing before the High Court or a county court. There are regulations which deal with the conduct of the appeal, which we've covered comprehensively in the book, but we have aimed this book at general practitioners who every so often may have a client who has a tax appeal, a dispute with HMRC, and they need to take it to the tribunal. And I think that the tips I would give would be be proactive, don't simply react to HMRC, engage with HMRC, they're human beings. The vast majority of HMRC officers are perfectly reasonable, decent people, and you can have a collaborative approach to litigation. There's no need to be hostile or to disagree on every single point. I think you should seek very detailed, comprehensive directions from the tribunal, ideally with the agreement of HMRC, and we invariably, in my own practice, end up agreeing with HMRC what the direction should deal with, and the sort of things you want to cover are a statement of agreed facts, because that will shorten the hearing and everyone then knows what the factual basis is. You want to have a statement of issues so everyone knows what the tribunal needs to determine. You want to deal with witness evidence as well if your client is going to provide a witness statement, and also prepare an agreed bundle with HMRC so that everyone has one unified paginated bundle at the hearing. I think as long as you prepare properly along those simple, straightforward lines, then there's absolutely no reason why a general practitioner should not take an appeal to the tribunal on behalf of his client.
Excellent. Well, you certainly suggest that in the book, that taking sort of those appeals, is something that is achievable. And do you think that people, after reading the book, and certainly there's a lot in here that could guide you through, do you think that people after reading the book feel that they've got that level of confidence to take that next step?
I think so. That was certainly our aim when we wrote the book. It, as the title suggests, it's a practical guide. It's aimed at accountants and lawyers primarily. Some taxpayers may find it useful themselves, but it really is geared towards people who don't take tax appeals every day of their lives. But as I say, when a client comes along to them and he has a dispute with the revenue and they haven't been able to resolve it by way of negotiation, then this guide should enable you to take the case to the tribunal.
And I feel that is right, actually, because a number of I lecture quite widely on the CPD circuit, and a number of times I have people come up to me with questions at the end where you actually feel that this area of the law needs clarifying, or on the facts that are certainly presented to me, the practitioner really should be pushing this. And reading this, I might think, yes, I am going to make a case here because it's the right thing to do and I've got the confidence to do it. So that is what really the aim of the book, and I'm hoping that that will encourage more people to actually get some areas of the law that desperately need some clarification, or a set of facts that certainly have their grey areas sorted out in front of, in the right process, because that's what the process ultimately is there for.
Indeed, and the advantage of the tribunal system is that it's primarily a no costs system, so even if you lose, unless of course it's a complex case and you haven't opted out of costs, but you can always opt out. So if you want to, you can ensure that your client isn't at risk to HMRC in terms of costs if they lose. So as you say, Chris, there's absolutely no reason why someone who feels strongly about a point of law should not take it to the tribunal, where they'll be given a fair hearing. It'll be determined by an independent body of professionals.
Yes, and that's the important bit now. It's a body of professionals who will see these things based on what the law says.
Yes.
So, just finally, while I have you here, Adam, an interesting development recently took place, and of course in the case of Robert Smith, which you commented in Taxation magazine. What effect does this decision have on our understanding of when HMRC are entitled to make a discovery assessment?
I think sadly, Chris, the law in this area is rather opaque, and personally I think we perhaps need a Supreme Court decision to actually clarify the position when it comes to discovery assessments, because certainly at the moment it's very difficult to advise a client with any sort of certainty as to whether the revenue have been entitled to issue a discovery assessment or not. We had the Charlton decision earlier this year, which in that case the taxpayer was successful, and it was held both at the first tier tribunal and the upper tribunal that the revenue weren't entitled to make a discovery assessment. In this case, the tribunal, the first tier tribunal, decided that the revenue were entitled to make a discovery assessment, and I think that the taxpayer can feel slightly disappointed, if you like, because the reason that happened was the revenue officer involved had been on sick leave for 5 or 6 months. The inquiry window had closed. He disclosed in his tax return that he'd been involved in ships, which was second-hand insurance premium avoidance scheme. So he had disclosed that in the white space on his tax return, but notwithstanding that level of disclosure, the revenue were entitled, according to the tribunal, to make a discovery assessment. So I think the state of the law at the moment is rather unsatisfactory, and I'd like to see a higher court actually once and for all make it quite clear when the revenue can rely on their discovery powers and when they can't.
Well, let's hope that we do get some further clarification. This case makes its way through the court system. Of course, our customers out there can keep up to date on that through our Tolley library service, and indeed I'm sure if it does come back you'll be writing further for us in taxation.
I'm sure I will.
Really hope so, Adam. Well, many thanks for joining us today, Adam. It's been a great pleasure to talk through what's really inspired you to put together this book with Jonathan.
Oh, thank you.
So you heard it here first. A Practical Guide to Tax Appeals is a must-read for anyone dealing on a regular basis with HMRC, because at the very least it will give you the confidence to challenge decisions that you feel rightly need challenging and should be heard elsewhere. Many thanks for joining us. My name is Chris Jones.